let's stop being surprised. And let's just remember, like, Christ anticipated this.
Yes.
And all we have to do is go back to the beginning.
Welcome to the Be Filled podcast. Together, we will explore the deepest desires of the human heart and how our Creator wants to fulfill your every longing. Join us as we explore the beautiful teaching of St. Pope John Paul II on the theology of the body. We are so excited you're here on the journey with us. Open your heart to be filled. Hello, and welcome to our final episode of this season. My name is Rochelle Parker, and I'm here today with my irreplaceable friends. See what I did there?
Yeah,
irreplaceable
like
friends. Katie,
you.
Yeah, you are. Katie Davis, Patty Strauss, and Sister Cecilia Ann. And I cannot believe this is the last episode of this season. It's amazing. It's gone by super fast. So today we're going to discuss Audience 23 in the text of St. Pope John Paul II's Theology of the Body. This is the conclusion of Chapter 1 of Part 1. And so we are going to talk about that, and then we're also going to just kind of chat about our experience this season, reading the text, and just kind of what this adventure has been like for us. And then I'll share briefly what you can expect in Season 3, which will start in September of 2024, if you're listening to this as they come out. And then we're also going to share some resources for more study, so that during the break, if you are listening to this as they come out, you might have some other opportunities to dig in and learn more. So we will get started. So Audience 23, like I said, is a conclusion of this chapter. And I just found it to be really powerful. So he starts out with just a brief review of kind of what we have been doing in this chapter entitled Christ Appeals to the Beginning. And he reminds us that this all started looking at Jesus's answer to the Pharisees when they questioned him about marriage and divorce. And he appeals to the beginning, to our creation in his answer. And so what John Paul II has been trying to do, and what we've all been trying to do with him, is to explore, what does that mean? What does it mean to go back to the beginning? And what are the implications for our lives, for our relationships, and the meaning of our bodies? And then he talks a little bit about how this is relevant for us today, and then sets the stage for the next chapter. So I want to get to the discussion as soon as possible. So I'd love to just open it up and see what stuck out to you guys in this audience.
Well, I think for me, as I was reading through Audience 23, I was thinking about how timeless it was, and how it was almost like John Paul II knew exactly what we were going to be going through, and he addressed it. And then when you think back, like, wait, all he was doing was repeating what Jesus said 2,000 years ago. So wait, Jesus knew all the crazy things that were going to be happening to us right now? And, you know, when you step back and think about, like, all of the advances that we've made in our knowledge, in what you're able to just Google on the internet, like, we have such a deeper understanding of our bodies, yet we still have to go back to the beginning to get, like, the basics. Right. And it's almost like the more we learn about it, maybe the further we get away from the original plan. And something Bill Donahue always says over and over again in his commentary is that, like, God is not asking us to rewrite the plan. Like, oh, things have changed now. We have to adapt, and we have to pivot, and we have to, change everything. He's actually just being like, nope, it's still all the way back to the very beginning. Right. And so while we may be shocked every time something new comes out, like, can you believe what these kids are doing these days? Which I swore never to say
right.
when I was younger, and here I am. Like, I go back to that quote at the top of page 220, and it says, At any rate, Christ would not be surprised by any of these situations, and I suppose that he would continue to refer, above all, to the beginning. And so let's stop being shocked every time our kids come home and say something that they heard in school or found on the internet, regardless of our best devices to try and stop them from Googling anything on the internet. Let's stop being surprised.
Right.
And let's just remember, like, Christ anticipated this.
Yes.
And all we have to do is go back to the beginning. Like, it was just a perfect way, I feel like, to close out this section. What do you think, Patty?
Yeah, I can kind of echo that too, because I was really a little confused about what is adequate anthropology. But again, listening to the kids, looking at our culture, I'm like, oh, we're desperate for that adequate anthropology. And if we can trust that Jesus says who he is, and we do, and we can, then we can say, oh, there it is. There it is. It has to keep being re-spelled out to us. We have to go back. We have to dwell on it. We have to sit with it. And it's just been a wonder. I've grown so much at reading, each audience in sync, and just to hear, so there's a plan, and it's so loving. So within it, not just the matter-of-factness of it, but the true love that our Lord has for us, and the wonder and merriment of how he created us in our relationships. And what's happening in our home is we're really looking a lot at the difference between male and female and the way we think. And I think when I first got married, I thought that men thought a lot like, generally speaking, that men thought a lot like I did as a female, and to my wonderment, found we're actually quite different. And my daughters are young and dating, and they're getting the same wonderment. And we, as a group, have been talking about that God just opened this up. It's a great adventure to learn to love and to listen, but it does come right back to the anthropology of the human soul, and we have to go back to the beginning. We have to see that there is truth here, and we have to go back to that to really get to the depth of it.
Absolutely. Sister?
When I was reading the conclusion again, I thought it was a beautiful summary and so forth. However, what it made me think about is, we see the phrase, the beginning. And back in November of 2014 through February of 2016 was the year plus a few months of consecrated life. And the Holy Father was asking all religious communities to go back to their roots. And that kind of echoed that whole idea to the beginning. Go back to your roots. Why was your community established? Are you living out the charism that you were given, and so forth? And so I think, throughout history, God is always calling us back to the beginning, back to the beginning of that first love. If you're a couple that gets married, remembering that, the first love of our community and so forth, the first, the gifts, the charisms, the drive for what we were created. And that led me to ponder, the phrase about, remember who we are and whose we are, because I think that always brings us back to the foundation. That we are created in the image of God, with that respect and that dignity, and how we continue to live that out, and that as human beings we are responsible for our actions. That we are not just objects, and what dignity that has. That we can choose. That we can't just say, "Oh, the devil made me do it." We have that free will. But again, because of the fall, we have weakened wills, darkened minds. Things that we have to fight against. But if we go back to the beginning, that is not, God intended us for goodness and for good. And he's given us so many gifts, and that if we keep bringing ourselves back to that. And so I don't know, what else can you add to that, Rochelle?
Yeah, I don't know. I was all
Covered
just,
it well.
so good. And I had similar reflections for sure. Katie, especially what you were reflecting on. What stuck out to me also was just this idea that, we're still struggling with the same kind of questions that they did back in Jesus' time about relationships and what it means to love and the meaning of our life, right? And I almost overlooked this one piece of what he was talking about how, people are still asking the right questions, right? About who am I and what does it mean to be human, but turning to different authorities, right? And that matters, where we look to for the answers has a profound impact. And it really made me look into my heart about this. And I encourage everyone who's listening to think about this too. Like, where am I looking for answers in my life? We're so used to, and I'm saying this as someone who I definitely have caught myself before when stressed out about something, whether it be parenting or relationships, to Google something.
Yes.
And that's really embarrassing that I would turn to Google. But I just think we're so used to in our society, in our culture, to find these quick answers to everything, and just figure it out. And so I've caught myself doing that, and I've had to repent of that. Like, Lord, no, first. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Googling things and trying to find information, but first I need to turn to the Lord. Like, what does He say? What is His answer to all of these questions? And so we need to, each of us, ask ourselves, where am I going? Am I going to the news? Am I looking at politics or ideologies, social media? Am I going to friends, or just my own, whatever I feel like doing, And I just think this happens to us so easily, even as believers, that sometimes we embrace things that, we're not thinking super deeply about, is this really in line with what Jesus is saying about who I am, and who, and how to treat one another. And so, it really gave me pause to think about that. So, and then the other thing I just wanted to point out too is he talks about, you mentioned all of these advances and technology and things like that. I mean, we have learned so much about ourselves and our bodies through science and biology, and those are all really good things. The church does not reject science or biology, and John Paul II certainly doesn't either. But there is that line of when it becomes a way in which we reduce the person to an object that can be sort of manipulated or just dissected in some way to understand, then that is where we have issues because then we're not necessarily treating ourselves or others with the dignity of the person, loving the whole person. And there's a risk for use there. So, he doesn't dig into this all the way like he will towards the end of Theology of the Body, but he's I feel like he's just planting that little question in our head. Just because we can do these things, is it really what we need to be doing? And is it in line with what Jesus is saying about going back to the beginning? So, so that's kind of some of the thoughts that I had about that. And then there was one other quote too, and this one, I've heard this quote many times, but I just wanted to share it because it's just so awesome. But he says, the fact that theology also includes the body should not astonish or surprise anyone who is conscious of the mystery and reality of the incarnation. Through the fact that the Word of God became flesh, the body entered theology, that is, the science that has divinity for its object, I would say, through the main door. So just the significance of the incarnation and why it matters so much. Our bodies do matter, and they're so sacred. So did you all have any other reflections before we move on from that?
I'm really glad that you brought that up, Rochelle, because I think that that's been the thing that I keep going back to when we talk about the adequate anthropology, and that, well, God changed everything when He became flesh incarnate. And then, we were talking about the different ideologies and how do we know which one's true? And just, it's so life-giving to say, well, here, read this in detail, and it's given to you, and we can sit with that. And so it's been very life-giving to me. I'm glad you brought that out.
Yeah. Beautiful. Any other thoughts? No? Okay. Great. So, that was a fast one. It was only 3 pages in the book. So, and of course, there's more things that, he talked about and we could say, but again, we just encourage you, if you can, pick it up and read it yourself. It's really, really powerful, the way that he presents all of these beautiful truths. So now we just kind of like, as we're ending this season, we just kind of want to share a little bit about like, how has God worked through this and helping us on our journey? We've certainly learned a lot about podcasting, I would say.
You have.
I have learned a
More than
lot.
us, but yes, we
I
support you.
didn't ever know that I was going to learn so much about audio and, editing and things like that. Has been a really fun thing to do. So grateful for our new sound equipment. Again,
Yes.
shout out to Will and Landon
Thank
for
you.
being so amazing and supporting us. But definitely, I know for sure, we were just talking about this before the podcast, like we've all grown a lot together in our friendship and just learning from one another. It's been such a honor and joy to hear all of your reflections, and I just learned so much from each of you. And I know we've all had just different things coming up in our lives that we've been able to just really apply what we're learning. I was saying earlier, like this, the messages in our culture are just very loud, and sometimes it's overwhelming, and I so need to have this I always tell people I need like an IV of theology of the body, just like pumping through my veins constantly. And doing this with you guys has really met that need so powerfully. And it's just been so fun. But my husband and I are raising 2 girls, like adolescent girls. And, there's just things that come up all the time on a regular basis that we're encountering and that they're encountering. And so I'm just so grateful to have this and to be able to just continually offer them the beautiful truth, and they are learning, how to apply that and testing it out in different ways. So it's challenging, but I'm so thankful that we are doing this. So I thank all of you for doing this with me, and I'm excited to keep going. So
Well, thank you for being our fearless leader and organizer, because I don't know if we'd be here right now, finishing out this season without you. So
We appreciate you
Yeah,
so much,
it's awesome.
your gifts.
And when I visualize the IV, I'm more like a slow drip. Rushing through, because I feel like it is so hard, I feel like, to dive into it. You almost just have to take a little sip at a time, and I think that is why this has been so beneficial. Even though it's not the first time I've read it, it's just the pace and just keep taking it slowly and really praying with it. I think that's such a good point you made about when we're faced with a big decision, do you just stop and pray about it before responding? In fact, I've been trying to just do that even with emailing, texting, or calling people back. When you feel that in your heart, be let me just pray and wait an hour and see if this reaction is still the same. And, the analogy that came to mind when I was thinking about it, though, was learning theology of the body is almost like learning a different language, where you just you can go through the classes and learn all of the rules and learn all the vocabulary, but until you just practice it regularly on a daily basis, you will not master the language. And so what has been really helpful, I think, is just knowing we're recording regularly, so I'm constantly reading, but then also as the podcast episodes have come out, just constantly being able to have conversations with people who did listen. And it's almost it's making me practice the foreign language more so that I can master it better, because when I am trying to talk to the girls about it, it's not having the talk with the girls, right? It's not one talk that you need to have with them. It should be just this constant conversation, because that's the only way they're going to learn the language. And I had a minor in Spanish in college. If you asked me to conjugate a verb at 9:30 at night, I would say no. I can't do it. My brain is not there, because I have not been practicing it in the last 2 decades. And so it's the same with theology of the body. Like, if my girls, which they always do, at 9:30 at night, ask me the world's biggest question about, who they are and what they need to do, I can't answer that question if I have not been practicing every single day. And the best part is practicing with them so that we can understand the language we're talking with each other. Yeah. So we've used the analogy of IVs, goggles, glasses, like all of these things. I just threw in the foreign language. But I think the point of the whole thing is every day. Like, talking about it every day, practicing it every day, just really seeing it in every day. You cannot listen to a song, read a book,
right?
Watch a movie without being like, how do they know theology of the body? It's so true. And I think it's beautiful. Like, I think the more we do it, the more we will master this language.
When I was kind of reviewing what we've done for the season, that very same thought kind of came to my mind. We talk about the lens in which you see things. And I know the sister I live with, she was talking about, they were going to be going over, different times of the year they go over, she teaches second grade, so communities, your neighborhood and everything. And I'm like, that is so theology of the body. Our community of persons, So it is, because you're talking about it, I thought, this is so easy to apply to our teaching because it's there. It's not like we're adding religion into our subjects. It is part of every subject. It is the basis of every subject. And I know earlier in the school year, our football coach at the high school was talking to the boys, giving them a little pep talk. But he was saying, what each of you do shows your commitment to the team. And as a team, we are a community of persons. God has brought us together. I thought, this is so amazing. It's not hard. Like you don't have to give everyone, some kind of great essay. Every time you talk about theology of the body, it's just part and parcel of who we are. Yes. And so it should be that easier language. And I think when we recognize that, it does become, like you said, that foreign language becomes our common language.
Yes.
And so that is exciting.
Yeah. That's exactly what keeps going through my head. I took I had been introduced to theology of the body, years before, but I took my first course in 2019, and it was with Christopher West at the Theology of the Body Institute, and he would say, become people who see. And that's exactly what we're all talking about. Yeah. And then he brings up that word, because what does our Lord want with us? He wants intimacy with us. He wants to know us. So he would say, into me, see. Yeah. So that's what we're all practicing. And it is so, so good to see through that lens and to see that that our Lord is right there in that great adventure with us, and that it shows up everywhere. And my daughter, I've been trying to, have these discussions, and we homeschool, so I kind of maybe put it a little more into a school kind of a setting than more than just this casual conversation. I think that's kind of been to our detriment because I put it in the framework of school. She's a little like, it's just, she's not receiving it. But she read The Little Prince, and in The Little Prince is exactly theology of the body. And when she read that, she goes, I can't get through that without crying. And I just was so amazed, because I was like, that is theology of the body. You do get it. It does resonate with you. If you take it outside of the school box, you really do see it. She's developing her ability to see, and that's delightful to me. It's great.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Yeah, and I mean, we can, like, with our kids, like, we can share with them everything we know, and they still may struggle, and that's really hard. But we were talking earlier about how like, we're all super passionate about it because of our own lived experience and how it resonates with that, how the Lord is healing us in different ways through it. Well, I mean, the same is true for our children and all those that we love. Like, there has to be this inner transformation in their own, like, embracing of it, And so, like, even though we want to save everyone from the struggle,
yes,
just because they're struggling, it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong or they're not going to get it. Like, you just keep going and keep praying and love them where they are and see them for what they're really after. And I think that's really helped me a lot too, when you have that wider lens of, like, what does everybody really want? Because then you see through the behavior and you see their heart and they want the Lord. The behavior is happening, but that's almost like an aside thing, like what they want is to belong, to be loved, to be seen, known, and loved, right? Is what everyone really desires. So a word of encouragement to you, like if you are, if your kids are struggling, those around you are struggling, and you're trying to share these things, just know that the Lord sees what you're doing and that those seeds are being planted, and you just have to wait and see, and just trust that He's doing it. He does not waste. I've said this before. He wastes absolutely nothing. So no matter what you're walking through, God is working through that. So I'm saying this to myself too. To all of you. But this is why we need each other. We need community so much, because it's hard to see sometimes, and we need to remind each other of what is true, good, and beautiful when we're going through all of that. So thank you to all of you listeners for walking with us on this journey. And I still have never gotten an email from anyone. So if anybody wants to email me, I mean, we have listeners all over the country, which is so crazy. And so I would love to hear from anybody, like kind of what your thoughts are and what's been helpful for you. We are so open to any feedback at all. Would be fabulous. But it's been just so much fun. So next season, like I said, it's going to launch in September in the fall, and we'll be moving on to chapter 2 of part 1, which is entitled Christ Appeals to the Human Heart. And this is where John Paul II is going to be looking at historical man, which is us, those of us after the fall. And he's going to do an in-depth analysis of Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 and 28, where Christ is talking about looking with lust and committing adultery in the heart. And so it's going to be tough. I mean, there's definitely a lot of challenging things to talk about there. And he asked the question, why does Jesus bring this up? Like, is he just trying to accuse our hearts, or is he calling our hearts to something higher? And he looks at the redemption of the body, how to live life according to the Spirit. So like super challenging, but also really hopeful. And I'm very excited to get into all of that. So I hope that all of you will just keep going with us. Feel free to share with a friend. It'll be a great time to get caught up on episodes too. So I think it'll be really exciting. So I don't know if you guys had anything extra to share about what's coming up, or your thoughts about that.
Excited to continue the adventure.
Yay. Okay. Awesome. All right. So as we're wrapping up the season, I did want to kind of leave you guys with possibly some resources that could help you on the journey, things that have helped us in learning about theology of the body. So I had a couple things I wanted to share with you. I've already talked about this before, but another plug for Theology of the Body Institute and all the amazing work that they do there. They have in-person classes, they have online courses, but they also have a less expensive route as well. They have TOB Patron, and so for as little as $10 a month, they have an amazing amount of content for adults. They have a teen program, they have a middle school program that I'm actually walking through with one of my daughters right now, and she's loving it. It is so, so good. So I just want to put a plug in for that. I'll put another link in the show notes for that. Also, really quick, I wanted to mention a new church document that I did finish called Dignitas Infinita. Good. Did I say that right? It's on the dignity of the human person, and it is really, really beautiful. There's nothing new as far as like the church's view on the person, but it's a beautiful and it connects with what we're doing so much. it lays out this really beautiful foundation of the church's teachings on the dignity of the human person, and then applies that to just a variety of topics, which at first glance, they may not seem related, but they are, because they all are really violations against the dignity of the human person. So I really want to encourage you to check that out. They're all just very pressing issues and questions that people have in the world today. So if you want to know what the church says, led by the Holy Spirit, about these topics, I just encourage you to look at that. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes also. So would anyone else like to share a resource?
Yes, I have a amazing devotional, and it is for married couples, and it's called Forever, a Catholic devotional for your marriage. And so Brent and I have been through this devotional 2 times now, and it is definitely repeatable. So I just loved going through it. It's 6 weeks long, and every day it's 2 pages a day. So not really long at all, but every day has like just a little chunk of theology of the body, and then it has a daily challenge, and then it has a prayer. So I think this does a couple of things. First, if you do not already pray with your husband, it starts a really good habit of daily prayer with your husband. We have talked to lots of engaged people and even married couples that are like, I have a really rich prayer life, but it's super awkward for me to pray with my husband or my wife. And so this is just such an easy way to start doing it. And the daily challenges are really just thought-provoking questions that you guys can discuss afterwards. So we just picked the same exact time every day to go through it, and we left enough time, like not just to rush through it, but to actually like have 10 minutes after we read to like talk about the questions. And it's everything from like discuss like what you thought the first time you saw your beloved is one of the questions, but then it's also like stare at your beloved for 2 minutes without talking and look deeply into their eyes to see who they really are. And like that was the hardest one for us because we just couldn't stop laughing. And so, but then, there's a question afterwards about like, what did you get from that? What did you notice that you've never noticed about your significant other? So just really sweet little things to help you, one, understand theology of the body a little bit better if maybe the text is a little overwhelming. 2, to start praying with your significant other. And then also to just like get to know each other a little bit more. Like you talk about like, sister, when you had to go back to the beginning with your religious community, like when you've been married for a while, like sometimes you need to go back to the beginning and go through that honeymoon phase a little bit more. And I really think this devotional helps. Like some of them are a little silly, like, aren't we beyond this? Like, but then you're like, no, we should constantly be going back to the beginning. And the most exciting news I have about this is one of the authors of this book is coming to Springfield, Missouri. Yay! And we are so excited. So Jackie Angel will be the keynote speaker for the Catholic Women's Conference. It is October 12th, 2024. Registration is open, so we will put a link in the show notes. But she is going to be an amazing speaker. She sings. She talks about theology of the body in the most approachable, down-to-earth way. And what I'm also super excited about is everyone that I have told about Jackie coming to the Catholic Women's Conference, they are they are telling me it's going to bring in like a younger audience, because a lot of the younger people have seen her in like Steubenville or some of the youth conferences. And so like, it's almost like she's the famous girl in the younger generations too. So we're really excited that this might bring, not that we don't want everyone to come to the Catholic Women's Conference, but we want everyone to come, and we're missing that younger generation there. So we're really hoping it'll bring all walks of life there. So very excited.
That is so exciting. And I'll definitely put a link to the registration.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for telling us about the book. I had another recommendation too. Ruah Woods also does a teenage kind of a video about theology of the body. And again, because I'm not theologically trained, I really enjoy going through the videos with my children, and I'm going with my daughter right now, and it brings up a lot of conversations so similar. When you're talking about the conversations with your husband, it's really fun to have these conversations, very special, and a lot of times we cry because it just moves us so much. So those are also, it's $10 a year, and you can get that at Ruah Woods for the teenagers. So I just opened that up too.
That is so great. Oh, so many things.
Yeah.
Sister, did you have anything?
I would always go back to the scriptures. As a religious, we spend some time with the scriptures every day. And as you're reading throughout the theology of the body, you go back, and I think it was Kate who kind of mentioned, it's already there,
Yes.
The popes have written about it in encyclicals, we have authors writing about it in new books, but Jesus and, God had inspired earlier writings, that it's there. And when you're reading it, you see it, and you can see when people take their focus off of God and so forth, the troubles that came. So I think you never go wrong making a habit of daily scriptures.
Oh,
Yes. Amen.
That is the best resource ever. Thank you, sister. This has just been so amazing. We're hoping to still be recording a little bit over the summer, so we'll be ready to launch season 3. But again, thank you so much for listening. And until the next episode, God bless. Thank you so much for listening. If you have questions or comments, we would love to hear from you. We can be reached by email at befilledpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media. We are on Facebook and Instagram. There you can find additional encouragement in between episodes. Also, be sure to check out our show description for links to resources we discuss in the show, as well as questions for deeper reflection. Until the next episode, God bless.